Hey, how's it going, everybody? So today I want to give you a look at a totally rad place. Totally 80s Pizza in Fort Collins, Colorado. I freaking love this place. It's been in existence since 2014, but this is actually its new location. I think it used to be an old Pizza Hut or something, I forget. This is actually my first visit to this new location here, and I gotta say that I'm pretty freaking blown away. I mean, just look at this hallway. As soon as you walk through the door, you got all these autographed pictures to the right, and to the left you actually have this really cool arcade. They have like a really good selection of games. I thought it was a little interesting that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Time was in there, since it's a 90s game and all, but then again, you know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is an 80s thing, so you know, close enough. They actually used to have a Galaga competition every year, and one year I won it. Another year I took second place, and so that was always a lot of fun. They do a lot of other really cool events here. One of the events that I really like is the DeLorean event that they do every year, and they just have like a bunch of DeLoreans parked out there, and people that own DeLorean show up. Even people like Ernest Cline showed up one year with his DeLorean. Right outside of the arcade, there's actually a little gift store set up, and I think that is really cool. I actually have a lot of the stuff that they sell in this gift store, so that should tell you that I really like it. I love how they have that Apple computer just kind of tucked up there like that. Looks nice. Of course, I got the Han Solo Frozen and Carbonite from Empire Strikes Back, and that's just totally rad. I love that thing. It's really breathtaking in person. I really enjoy this Goonies section that they have over by the arcade. I love the Goonies. The Goonies is my all-time favorite movie. I love seeing these autographs, especially the sloth picture here. That's just wow, like that's impressive. That had to take some time to get. So Totally 80s Pizza used to be next to a Chuck E. Cheese, and that Chuck E. Cheese was really well established, had been there for like ever, and then one day they decided to shut it down because the city of Fort Collins was gonna tear down the buildings there and build like a really nice hotel, and that ended up falling through as far as I know. But yeah, I remember they took a bunch of really big dumpsters there and just started loading up all the stuff out of there. Some stuff they, corporate must have took back with them, but other stuff they basically destroyed. I had heard about the dumpsters, and I went through the dumpsters, I think after whoever found the Chuck E. Cheese head, but I went there in the middle of the night, and I ended up getting all kinds of really cool arcade stuff, and that was pretty awesome. But I think it's too funny that they kept the Chuck E. Cheese head and put it on display. They have this really awesome Star Wars toy display that I really like. I thought that was a really cool touch. Probably my favorite item in this whole 80s museum is Pee Wee Herman's bike from Pee Wee's Big Adventure. Oh my god, I love that thing. If it wasn't illegal and I didn't like this place, I swear to everything I'd break it out of that glass and ride it off into the sunset. Oh my god, that thing is so cool. I've wanted that thing since I was a kid. I love that bike. It is just so cool looking. Now, it was actually a special occasion over at Totally 80s Pizza on the day that I was visiting. Philo Barnhart was in the house, and if you don't know who Philo is, I guarantee you that you know his work. Like, this guy has done a lot in the animation world. Like, wow, his stuff is just really good. He's one of those guys that actually draws. I thought it was really super cool to meet him. He seemed like a really down-to-earth kind of guy, and I went ahead and got one of his drawings that he autographed for me, and he took a picture with me. Super duper cool to meet him. I've actually met other super duper cool people at Totally 80s Pizza as well, and I'll talk about that later in the video. So after meeting Philo, my pizza was already at my table. I absolutely love their pizza. It's really good. It reminds me a little bit of how Domino's used to be in the 80s, but with way better crust and way better ingredients. The cheese on this pizza was so good and stringy. Oh man, it was just perfect. You might notice that I'm one of those people that likes pineapple on their pizza, and I can assure you that in the 80s, people thought that was cool. People liked pineapple on pizza. Back in the 80s, people used to gag at the thought of artichoke hearts or anchovies on their pizza. That was a common joke on a lot of 80s shows about anchovies on your pizza, about how gross that is. So of course, while we're here, we gotta take a look at all the stuff in the Totally 80s Pizza Museum. Like, I mean, why wouldn't you take a look at all this stuff? It's some of the coolest stuff that I've ever seen, and I really like that they have a cocktail arcade game right there, right in the main eating area. That is so cool. There's seriously a ridiculous amount of stuff in here. More stuff than you could possibly look at in one visit. If you were to stop and take a look at every last thing in this museum, I'm sure you'd be here for hours though. It's really astonishing. I guess they're gathering all these items for the museum for over a decade. And I believe it because there's some rarities in here. There's a lot of pictures that are actually autographed directly to Totally 80s Pizza, but there's also ones from people that are no longer with us that I'm sure cost them a good amount of money, and I'm sure took them a good long while to actually locate the items. It's not every day that you see an autographed picture of Mr. Rogers hanging out. Everything in Totally 80s Pizza I have a memory of from my childhood, and it's just so cool. I feel so comfortable and happy when I'm at Totally 80s Pizza. It's just a happening place. I dig it. I really like supporting local small businesses like in general, but the fact that this one is so good just makes it so much easier to like them. I think about the 80s every day. I come across people that tell me, Mike, the 80s are dead, man. You gotta get over it. You gotta move on. And whatever, man. The 80s rocked. They were so rad. The 90s were pretty cool too. The 90s were kind of like 80s Part 2, Electric Boogaloo, but they weren't quite the same as the 80s. The 80s, everything, the technology and stuff was advancing so much, and everything just seemed so futuristic and cool. We had flashy cars and the best movies that you could possibly ever watch. Like, I love the 1980s movies and the music, and just everything about the pop culture from the 80s is just super appealing to me still. I still listen to vinyl records and cassette tapes. I still watch Laserdisc and VHS. I still play the old arcade games, and I have arcade games at my house, and I play the old video games in general, the old consoles. I love the old computers and just everything about the 80s, the TV shows, just everything. It was just so cool to me, and it still sticks out to me like as my favorite time in my life. Like, I was a kid in the 80s, and so there was no bills to pay, no responsibilities. I could just hang out and watch cartoons and eat cereal and just do whatever I wanted, ride my bike, hang out with my friends, listen to music. I remember going places and there'd be arcade games everywhere you went. Like, you could go to 7-Eleven and there'd be arcade games in the 7-Eleven that you could play. It takes me back to a time when my family had one of those black cable boxes that had the filters in it that allowed you to get all the premium channels for free. And so I was watching HBO and Showtime and Cinemax when I was a kid, and I got to see movies like The Goonies and Pee-wee's Big Adventure hit TV for the very first time. I have so many random 80s memories stuck in my head all these years later. Like, I have this one. I remember I was in the 2nd grade in Yakima, Washington, and there's this kid named Lawrence Diaz that it was during show and tell, and he brought his Milli Vanilli tape, and he was so proud of it, and he just like wanted to go on and on about how Milli Vanilli was his favorite band, and he just really liked their music, and he thought that they're very talented and really good dancers, and he really liked their voices. And you know, I moved away from there as a kid. My family moved us out to Ohio temporarily, so I lost contact with that kid. But I always wondered if it crushed him to find out that Milli Vanilli used to lip sync. Anyhow, don't listen to any of those people that say that the 80s are dead and let it discourage you or whatever. Yes, the 80s are long gone, but I'm still here. A lot of people that were alive from the 80s, we're still here. And no matter what anybody says, the 1980s will be one of the greatest decades to ever happen in the history of ever, no matter what. You know, people my age, they tend to have kids, and they can bring their kids to this place, and the parents can have fun reminiscing about the 80s, and the kids can just enjoy the fact that there's pizza and video games and music going. It's interesting because when I talk to my friends that have kids, they'll tell me that their kids actually like some of the 1980s things, like some of the video games and some of the movies and the music and whatnot. And I think that's really cool, because to me, the 1980s are timeless. They can appeal to anybody. Things from the 80s can appeal to people of the now. I hope you enjoyed a look at Totally 80s Pizza, a place that I think that you should totally check out because it's totally rad. Anyhow, they actually inspired this whole section of my living room. I started meeting a lot of famous people around, and so I started thinking, what would be really cool is if I framed some of those pictures and put them up on my wall, kind of like at Totally 80s Pizza. And so over here I got my records and some of my retro games. And up there I got a couple 1980s Pepsi cans. Those are actually Denver, Colorado Pepsi cans there. And I got that Pac-Man glass that Totally 80s Pizza has as well. And of course He-Man. And then I got my cocktail arcade table there. That's Junior Pac-Man. And so over here, I actually got this from Totally 80s Pizza. Jambi the Genie. Mecca Licka High, Mecca Heidi Ho, or whatever. John Paragon, got to meet him at Totally 80s Pizza. He's actually from Fort Collins, Colorado, and I think his sister still lives out there. Unfortunately, not too much longer after I got this, he passed away. And so it makes it all that much more special that I got to meet him. And I got to talk to him about Elvira, because he actually wrote the Elvira movie. Or at least he was one of the writers. I think he might have been their main writer. Him and Elvira probably wrote it together. But yeah, he was great friends with Elvira. And so yeah, really cool to meet him. He signed it as Jambi. He says best wishes to Mike and Molly, and that's not the TV show. That's me and my girlfriend. So same one that I've been with for a good almost 8 years now. And so up here I got an autographed picture of Bill Allen. He played Crew in the movie Rad, a movie that I absolutely loved growing up. I used to rent the hell out of it all the time. I used to race BMX. I was in an amateur circuit, and oh man, I used to love riding my bike and watching Rad, and such memories, man. Up there I got a picture of Sean Astin, and so that picture was actually taken in Fort Collins, Colorado, at a bipolar speech that he gave for CSU. And afterwards he was walking out, and I walked up to him and I said, "Hey man, would you take a picture with the bipolar Goonie?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course." And he got really up close, right up next to me at first, and I'm just a little bit taller than him, but my girlfriend at the time couldn't figure out the camera, and so I basically asked him if he would, try again. And that was his kind of approach, is he kind of just leaned back over into the position. But super nice guy. The next time I met up with him over at the Denver Comic Con, which they have renamed since I've been, but I had him sign the picture that I had printed up at Walgreens, and he was like, "Where was this taken?" And I told him, and he's like, "I remember that." And I thought that was pretty cool that, he didn't really remember me, but he remembered the situation. And then once he remembered the situation, he remembered me. And he talked about how he's given speeches like that all over the United States for different colleges. And I thought that was really cool. He talked about how his mom, Patty Duke, had bipolarism or was bipolar or whatever. And I didn't know that. And so I learned something that I didn't know. And he also talked a lot about his dad. And very cool. And so he wrote "Sup, Mike, sup, Sean Astin," and he had that same smile on his face when he signed the picture. He thought that was really funny that he wrote "Sup." And I asked him about the next Goonies movie that was being talked about at the time, that has still never came out. I asked him if it was coming out, and he said, let me put it this way, when it does come out, it's all anybody will ever be talking about. So yeah, down here I got things like, I got My Rag Career, which is Bill Allen's book, and that's signed by him. I have Once Upon Atari, which is Howard Scott Warshaw's book, and that's also autographed by him. Over there I got a couple Keith Robinson books. the old CEO of Intellivision, and both of those are signed. And if you come over here, you see I got some more stuff on the walls here, and of course Galaga and RoboCop. I got my laser light shining down up there. Arcade over here. There's the picture I got from Philo, and man, it looks cool. I really wanted something Dragon's Lair, because he was an artist for that, and wow, is that just not phenomenal? Love that thing. It's so cool. I got it framed right away. I did not want to wait around for anything bad to happen there. But yeah, one other person that I met at Totally 80's Pizza that I did not get any pictures of, that's going to be Robin Shelby. Robin Shelby actually performed as Slimer in Ghostbusters 2. And so that was pretty cool meeting her. She was really nice. I liked talking to her. But anyhow, I just thought I'd give you a little look-a-rooney dooney at this part of my game room that was most definitely inspired by Totally 80's Pizza.